Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Diana B. Mangrobong, and this is the continuation report on the Indigenous knowledge system and practices. Here I will mention two ethnic groups in the Philippines, the Atis and the Bajaus. Moving on, the Atis of Manay are by nature nomadic, which means they keep shifting from one place to another. Their abode ranges from seashore to lowland to upland. They were at first among the cultural group to practice the slash and burn agriculture, kung saan yung mga movement nila ay highly influenced by their need to search for food or sustenance. Their nomadism is further aggravated by the fact na wala silang land para mag-plants or or tumira doon. In some months ay some ati family eat just one meal. But through the years, the artists of Panay were transformed into sedentary or settled communities. Factors that produces about include the influence of major cultural group, cash or market economy, and education. The major livelihood of the artists is highly dependent on the immediate environment and resources at their disposal. Take in the Nagpana Barotac Video Iloilo, their main livelihood is farming. On the other hand, in the Ikabakti and Ikaputol Dao Antique, their main source of living consists of making nipa shingles and fishing, respectively. But their year-round earnings from their livelihood are insufficient, so sometimes they have to work as a laborer in rice and sugarcane farms in faraway places. The origin and historical perspective of the indigenous knowledge system and practices of the Atis have started and evolved since time immemorial. Livestock, livestock rising was introduced by the government in its desire to uplift the socio-economic condition of the tribe. The AKSP was passed on through generation of artists in the context of their culture, tradition, and custom. It was taught from parents to children up to the present generation. In the Nagpanabarsak video, the traditional kaingin practice of ate has been modified to become more sustainable with technological intervention of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources DNR. So what are the indigenous knowledge and system and practices of the Atis? First is the farming. The Atis were, as mentioned before, the first to practice the slash and burn system in the whole country. Those who live in upland areas engaging in Sweden farming. The planting started on the onset of rainy season, which the Caraba manure is used to fertilize plants. Weeding and fertilization are done using organic and inorganic fertilizer. And the planted crops can be harvested in 3 to 4 months. And there are also variety of rices planted such as Sosina, Malido, and Kutsiang, which is also planted once a year. There's also vegetable like beans, mungo, and gabi in the farming of the Atis. The evolutionary changes in the farming of the Atis is that due to the knowledge of modern technology and the impact of Visayan culture, it brought significant changes. In the past, the Atis were just nomadic people, but with the passing of the year, they shifted to building permanent houses. There's also the use of the fertilizer and pesticide, which is becoming more popular among the Ati farmers. The current upland farming practices revolve around the sloping agricultural land technology, which short for SALT, as introduced by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources (DNR). SALT consists of crop production in alleys that are lined with hedge rows of leguminous shrubs which serve as safeguards against erosion and source of inorganic fertilizer and fiber. For every three alleys planted to annual crops, adjoining alleys are planted to perennial crops like coffee, calamansi, or banana. With soil productivity of their upland farms have increased through the years. But there's also some problem. The infertile soil, which is the forest denudation and continuous cultivation of slope farm have marginalized the land and brought down its productivity. The insufficient capital. The income of the artists from various livelihoods cannot support the capital needs for farming. The lack of farm implements and farm animals. Many artist farmers cannot acquire farm implements like plow. Only few of artists have benefited from the Carabao dispersal given by the Department of Agriculture. There is also the problem of occurrence of pests and disease. Pests like rats and worms have been attacking their crops, resulting to low yield or harvest. There's also the insufficient water for the farm. At one hand, this problem was brought about by the continuous removal of the vegetation. During summer, water in the soil is not available for plant use. This is aggravated by the pronounced dry season in the area from December to April. There's also the problem of fire occurrence. Some remaining Kaingin areas are prone to fire occurrence, especially during summer. And lastly, the problem of scarcity of land to cultivate. The farmers have only limited land to cultivate. This prevents them from expansion. Fallow period become more shortened. The artists in the Dao Antique do not even have their own land to cultivate. The second practice is the hunting. Hunting is a secondary source of substance among artists. In the early days, they employed bows and arrows for such activity. Aside from hunting, their bows and arrows are used not only for hunting but also for fishing as well as defense. There are methods employed by artists to capture particular species of wildlife. I will mention some of it, like the wildcat, which is captured by shooting the head with arrow. The iguana, a bulo is used to inflict wounds on the animal purposely to immobilize it after which is sized manually. There's also the monitor lizard. Hunting for the animal is based after rain. Hunters search for monitor lizard among the branches as well as on the forest floor. Monitor lizard and there's also the turtle is delicacies among the artists. They are found in the forest, banana clumps, and in open fields. There's also the evolutionary chances in the hunting. Hunting is seldom by the artists today. Seldom done by the artists today. Very few of the younger generation of the tribe are familiar with the hunting practices of their forefathers. This is due to the dwindling population of animals being hunted. And there's also the problem. As stated above, the most pronounced problem is the dwindling population of wildlife. Many times they have no catch at all in their hunting expedition. Deforestation should help a lot in bringing back the wildlife population. There's the third practice is the handicraft. Handicraft making is a secondary livelihood among the artists. It is done during rest period. Indigenous materials like biribid, black vine, bulo, huag are used. Products are woven following a geometric design. Nito vine with either black or brownish skin are used to embellish some of their work, such as buon buon. Making of nifa singles from coconut leaves is a primary livelihood of the artists in the O Antique. It is usually done during the dry months. There's also some problem. The low price and limited market for nipa single. The income derived from nipa single production is not enough to support a family because of its low price, which is 130 per 100 pieces of nipa single. On top of this, the product has limited market since only a limited number of households owners use this as a roofing material. Most buyers belong to the poor sector who cannot afford to buy costlier materials. There's also the insecure land tenure. The artists of Sitio Ikabakti in the O Antique consists of 43 households who are currently staying in a 15 to 20 hectares privately owned land. They were given permission by the landowners to stay there on the transit basis. They feared that anytime they might ask to leave. Each family dreams of having a land of their own. There's also the food preparation. The artist's staple food are mainly rice and root crops. Root crops are gathered from the forest or from the hills with the use of rough tools like wooden double stick or iron tip double stick. Banayan and kayos or yam are favorite root crops of the ate. Kayos contain some toxic substances which needs proper preparation to remove its lethal effect. Cassava is also eaten by artists as staple food. It is prepared by first peeling the tubers and shredding with a locally fabricated tin can shredder. The shredded materials are then sun-dried to remove the moisture content. Further pounding in stone mortar is done to pulverize the material. The cooking follows after. There's also the practice of the fishing. Fishing is done individually or in group. Artists in Igapotolda o Antique employ the simplest method to catch fish like hook and line method, use of log tang vine to poison fish and different kinds of fishing net. There's also the use of the fruit of log tang, which is used for the fish poisoning in order to lure the fishes into the surface. When the fish eat the fruit, they get dizzy or afloat for some time. Uh, Take note that artist fishermen do their fishing at night and land back to the shore early in the morning. There's also the evolutionary changes in this. The traditional fishing system among artists have changed through time. They have slowly adapted the modern technology of fishing as used by their neighbor Visayas. The use of bow and arrow and lagtang vine is now fading. With the, with the dwindling fish stock, they are forced to go farther offshore as far as 15 kilometers. There's also the problems in the fishing, which is the lack of capital. The high cost of securing fishing boat and fishing gears greatly hamper the artists from having bigger catch. The low price of fish. Market price for fish is rather low at 20 to 25 pesos a kilo. The low or poor harvest. Aside from overfishing, this problem arises from the use of modern undestructive fishing methods like the use of dynamite. The increasing number of fishermen in the area is using greater and greater pressure on limited fish resources. There's also the livestock farming. As mentioned before, livestock realizing is becoming popular among the artists in Nagpanabartak, Video Iloilo, and Igaputol Dao, Antique. And animals like chicken, fish, goat, carabao, and cow are raised in the area. The animals are confined especially during growing and harvesting time to minimize damage to the crops. Dogs, fowls, and swine are fed in bamboo to held in place by pigs. Pigs are sheltered underneath a tree within the vicinity of the house and are tied in place using ordinary ropes. Carabao and cows are brought to nearby cover areas to graze. And sometimes children are assigned to watch the animal from time to time to keep them from damaging and eating planted crops. The evolutionary changes in this is that the livestock raising is becoming more popular, which is promoted by the government programs in aim of uplifting the artist's living condition. Some of them raise exotic breed like land race. However, the problem in this is that the stealing of the animal. Cases like this are referred to and resolved by tribal leader. There's also the practice of the traditional healthcare. The artists of Panay possess superstitious belief connected to illness. They use charms and amulets to detect the presence of evil spirit causing illness. They believe in the existence of kalanasin and aswang. The panagang, a charm, is used against witches. It consists of vessel filled with oil shoot of tagahusay, tagahumok, lapoiche, panole, and huagwine. The titi is employed as a charm against forest spirits which inflict bulao or malaria. The stone is soaked in water for 1 day, then the sick is given the liquid for drinking. They also use diamante negra, a mineral stone soaked in water along the titi. This is effective against it, ayon sa mga atis. The traditional medicine, some of these are medicine used is like alibutia, the cure for the stomach ache, tagulaway, cure for bruises and wounds, duguan or cure for vomiting and diarrhea, obstructed menstrual flow, a banana, the cure for fever, coconut oil mixed with anagus leaf, cure for rashes, garlic, cure for snake bite. The evolutionary changes is that in the past, sickness has been perceived by the artist as a work of environmental spirits. However, through continuous education and introduction of modern technology, the artists now believe that diseases like tuberculosis and dysentery are caused by germs. The knowledge and expertise of their ancestors in identifying and preferring herbal medicine are becoming less observed through the younger generation. The problem naman dito sa mga traditional medicine and healthcare is that some logic and effectiveness in the traditional medicine employed by the artist is true or effective. However, the indifference of the succeeding generation is causing this to face and be forgotten. It is high time that knowledge and practices be documented and evaluated in detail for application. Uh, the impact of their livelihood and surrounding indigenous knowledge system. The indigenous knowledge system and practices, farming, livestock raising, and fishing of the artists in the Panay help to augment the socioeconomic situation of the community. The families in Igabacti were the most depressed among the Ati communities studied. They are dependent on their wages as laborer for Visayan landlords. The methods of fishing in Igapos Huldao Antique are environmentally friendly. Despite the environmental friendliness of the fishing of the Ate, there is threat to marine ecological imbalance due to the modern fishing method of the Visayan fishermen. The Ate adoption and practice of control farming and salt are paying off in terms of improved farm production and restoring forest cover. It is also instrumental in ensuring other amenities like fuelwood and availability of water for domestic use because of maintained spring. It is hoped that through time, with the planting of more trees, some of the wildlife that Ati used to hunt like monitor lizard and wild boar will reappear again in greater number. Moving on to the badges of the Tawi-Tawi. Along the coast of Sulu and Tawi-Tawi archipelago can be found a cluster of communities inhabited by highly mobile people who live in still houses, otherwise known as boat-dwelling people. They are called as sea gypsies or bajaus. The bajaus can be found along the coast of Hulu, Siase, and Tapul Island and farther south in Sitangkai and Sibutu. They are also found in far-off places such as Surigao, Davao, and Zamboanga. The Bajaus are sea gypsies or sea nomads, whom their Tausug Samal neighbors sometimes call Samal Luwaan, outcasts, or Samal Laod or Palao, people of the ocean. They spend most of their time in the sea environment. The Bajaus are harmless, peaceful, seemingly content, and happy people. The major livelihood of the Bajau consists of seaweeds, farming, and fishing. This livelihood caters their love of the sea, while fishing reflects their cultural inclination to harvest from nature bounty. Seaweed farming reveals their diligence to work and improve in nature productivity. Aside from upliftment of socioeconomic enhancement of favorable marine resources, this livelihood promotes the preservation of their custom and tradition. This livelihood distinguishes them from other neighboring tribes. And the origin and historical perspective, the indigenous knowledge system and practices of the Bajau started and evolved since time memorial. They learned fishing and mat weaving from their ancestors. However, seaweed farming was introduced to them by the Sarmiento Corporation in the mid-80s. The Bajau handed their AKSPs from one generation to another through communication and practice experiences. The indigenous knowledge system and practices. These are the fishing, deep sea fishing, and seal gathering. The fishing, as mentioned before, due to the Bajau living in the boat, fishing is their lifeblood and a way of life. Before seaweed farming was introduced to them, their sustenance and survival depends solely on fishing. The fishing method employed by the Bajaus are environmentally friendly. These include lenge or net fishing, pang-ambe deep sea fishing, paobik or panas, spear and arrow or hook and line, bubu, bamboo fish, trap, pitikan, diving weapon, and sankalia or shark fishing. The deep sea fishing, big fish like tuna and mackerel are caught by deep sea fishing. The fisherman used a group of ventas to encircle a group of fish with either a fish net of bamboo slat hung vertically in the seawater under the ventas. The seashell gathering is done by women and children. This provides them supplemental protein source and income, especially when the sea is rough and fishing is not favorable. There is also some evolutionary changes in that. The growing influence of cash economy has tended to lure the Pachaos to be more aggressive in fishing. This development, plus the increasing number of fishermen, is exerting greater and greater pressure on the fish and the marine sources. In the past, Bajau gathered shell merely as food supplement. Today, considering greater demand, shell gathering and selling is done to earn substantially greater income. However, there's also some problem. The presence of the pirates. Tausug pirates threatens life to the Bajau when fishing at night. These pirates are warrior people. The lack of capital, equipment used in fishing such as net, pump, boat are relatively expensive. The unstable market condition. The market for fish is not stable. Some of their catch are sold rather at a very low price. There's also the seaweed farming. Seaweed farming is a very promising livelihood for poor families in coastal. Farmers in some coastal areas like Sitangki Tawi-Tawi are involved in this livelihood. There's also the harvesting and drying. The seaweeds are ready for harvesting 3 months after planting. The harvested seaweeds are sun-dried for about a week on a clear land or in drying platform made up of bamboo slat or concrete cement. There are also some problems. The high capital requirement, the budget income from fishing is not sufficient to support the needed amount for the seaweed productivity. The limited space for drying. Adequate space is needed for thorough drying. Mortality during low tide. The most common problem encountered by the budget is the drying up of planted. Sites that are deep enough are chosen as site for seaweed farming to avoid undue exposure of plants to direct sunlight. There's also the mat weaving. The Bajaus are known for their expertise in mat weaving. This home-based livelihood helps augment their family income. Mat weaving is done by the Bajau women. The material used is like pandan leaves, jangatan, an equidistant metal-bladed tool for stripping pandan leaves, and buhut, a bamboo stick for flattening the leaves, and anggangibi or dye for coloring the strips for weaving. In the weaving, an exquisite design is first chosen and followed in weaving. Names may also be interwoven into the design. Since the pandan strips are not long enough to reach from one end to another of the mat, sukpot or continuators are woven in by a technique known as a nogpot. The traditional healthcare. The lack of sanitation is observed among Bajau in particular and the community as a whole. Much of their domestic waste include excreta and solid waste are disposed in the tidal waters and sweep into different directions of the tide. Diseases such as malaria, fever, cholera, cholera, ulcers, tuberculosis, malnutrition are very recurrent among the members of the community. The Bajau believe in the healing power of magic, calling on the spirits to cure their disease. Pangjin is performed to cure such disease. It is performed at night before the full moon comes up. They believe in the power of the kingman, a herbulario, to drive away evil spirit. The evolutionary changes is that the influence of Islam and Christianity have invariably changed the outlook and beliefs of the Bajau. The Pangjin is seldom practiced now. From being spirit worshipper, the Bajau are slowly embracing Islam as religion. Educational advancement has also led them to adopt popular practices, including modern medicine. Some herbal medicine of the Bajau is a sibuka, which is the cure for loose bowel movement, loya, cure for rheumatism, mangkono guava, cure for lessening the pain and of dislocated joint. The impact of livelihood and surrounding indigenous knowledge system. The Bajau derive substantial income from their livelihood. A sewer farmer can earn 71,000 pesos per hectare per year. The amount is sufficient to support the daily needs of the family. Aside from this, they earn income from fishing and mat weaving. The Bajau in Bunga Tawi-Tawi, who's dependent only on fishing, are poorer compared to the Bajau in the Sitangki Bunga. The families are dependent on their daily catch. In the organizational aspect, the Bajau have their own system of leadership called Pangliman. This system still exists in other Bajau villages, but no longer as powerful as in the past. In the past, the Panglima system was very strong. The power of the Panglima were informally defined, but his authority is recognized and respected. However, this system is weakening and fading. The power of Panglima has been transferred to the barangay captain. The introduction of the system of local government unit has functionally displaced the Panglima system, so that while we still have a Panglima leader, he is simply a symbolic figurehead. Another factor relating to the weakening of this indigenous leadership system is the incapability of their Panglima leader. His responsibilities are not well attended. Consequently, members of the community become individualistic and family-centered. The indigenous knowledge system is the traditional or the former system that different kinds of tribes in the Philippines used to practice. But due to the introduction of the modern technologies and educational knowledge, some of this was fading. And that's all. Thank you for listening.